Hello there, I'm artist Aaron Rutten, and in this video we'll take a look at installing software onto the CINTIQ Companion 2, as well as customizing the CINTIQ Companion 2. So first of all, how do you install software on the CINTIQ Companion if it doesn't have a CD drive? Well, most applications can be downloaded through an installer, so if you have a web browser like Firefox or Internet Explorer or Chrome, you'll be able to go on the internet and you'll be able to download installers for just about any program. If you have programs that are on a disk, you can get a USB disk drive. So I'm going to go ahead and install Firefox, make that my default because that's my preferred browser, and then I'm going to download some applications to put on my CINTIQ Companion 2. Next, I'll begin installing those programs. I'm going to start with an antivirus program, and Avast is a good free antivirus program. Next, I'll install Creative Cloud. That'll give me access to Photoshop and Illustrator and everything else that's available in the Creative Cloud subscription. Once I've finished installing my apps, I'll want to go to my Start menu, and I'll want to pin some of those apps so that I can get to them quickly. I can pin them here, or I can also pin them to the taskbar on the desktop, or put them as desktop icons, depending on which you prefer. So I'll right-click on each application and choose Pin to Start. Next, I'm going to resize some of these tiles to make them smaller, because I think the icon is sufficient. That way I can see more icons at once and I don't have to scroll. So I'm just going to change all of these to small by right-clicking on them, and then I'll sort things a bit by putting them in order. One of the most important things to install is the Adobe RGB color profile. You can search for Adobe RGB, and it's this link here, Adobe RGB 1998. If you scroll down to the bottom of this page, you'll get the link for both Windows and Mac. Go ahead and download the appropriate file, and then go ahead and open that file. That'll extract the file, and then you can just click on Finish. Then you'll want to go to your Control Panel, and then look under Color Management. Next, we'll click on the Advanced tab, and we'll change our device profile to Adobe RGB 1998. That's up there at the top. You'll also need to go into each application like Photoshop and Corel Painter, go to the color settings, and set this as the default profile there as well. And this will give you a larger number of colors while you're painting. Next, let's do a few quick tests in our digital painting applications to make sure that pen pressure and touch are working. I'm here in Corel Painter, and I'll do a few little test strokes to make sure my pressure works. I'll go into Photoshop here, and I'll test pressure here as well. In Photoshop, you can turn the pen pressure on and off with this button here. And in addition to controlling the diameter of the brush with pressure, you can also control the opacity of the stroke. I can turn that on and off as well. The Companion 2 has a high-resolution screen, which means that some applications might have text that appears too small to read. In Photoshop, you can actually change the UI scaling in the interface preferences, and you can increase or decrease that depending on what you need to do. More than likely, you're going to want to increase it rather than decrease it, because if you decrease it to 100%, let's take a look at what happens. You'll have to restart Photoshop to apply those effects. So I'll go ahead and restart Photoshop here. And when it restarts, you'll see that everything gets tinier. So now it's almost impossible to read that text. The buttons are too small to see. And so I definitely don't want to set it to this setting here. I'll go back to the preferences, interface, and I'll change the UI scaling either to auto or to 200%. And then I'll have to click OK, and I'll have to restart Photoshop, and everything is much better. Next, let's test the touch. Pinching zooms the canvas in and out, and twisting rotates the view of the canvas. You can double tap with 2 fingers to reset the view. Those same gestures work here in Corel Painter. The only difference is to reset the canvas, you have to triple tap with 2 fingers. Next, let's customize the Express keys. I'm going to open up the Wacom tablet properties. The Express keys are essential to streamlining your workflow. Assigning common commands to an Express key not only frees up screen space, it also makes it less necessary to carry around a keyboard. I'm going to click on the Functions tab, and this shows us the 6 Express keys that surround the rocker ring. Now, if you want to know what the shortcuts are for each application, the easiest thing to do is go into that application and look at Customize Keys, or keyboard shortcuts. You'll be able to browse all of the available keyboard shortcuts, and you'll be able to change the keyboard shortcuts to something else if you like. So based on my experience of using this tablet primarily for painting outside, I have some suggestions. I'm going to set the first 3 keys on the top left to Shift, Alt, and Control. Those are all modifiers, and they're very useful for drawing straight lines and sampling color and so on. Next, I'll assign some shortcuts to the lower 3 keys. It's important to note that you can have the Express keys on either the left or the right, depending on which you prefer. Since I'm right-handed, I'm going to have my keys on the left. I'm going to set the bottom Express key to turn touch on and off. I'm going to set the top Express key to a keystroke of space, which also pans or drags the view of the canvas. That comes in handy. And then the key below that, I'm going to set to the temporal color picker in Corel Painter, and the keyboard shortcut for that is Control-Alt-1. This will quickly show and hide a color picker. Now let's go ahead and set up the express keys for the rocker ring. There's 4 express keys. You can't change the Windows key in the middle, but you can change the surrounding keys. But before we go too far with that, I want to mention that you can have application-specific express key profiles. So what that means is you can have a set of keys for Photoshop, you can have a set of keys for Painter, a set of keys for ArtRage, and so on. So if you want to add a program, if it's already open, you can click on the plus button. If it's not already open, you'll have to browse for it, but we'll take a look at how to do that a little bit later. Since these shortcuts are for Painter 2016, I've added that. And so for the left rocker ring, I want to set that to keystroke Control-Z, and that'll be for undo, since that's kind of pointing backwards, and then pointing forwards for the right button would be keystroke Control-Y for redo, so forwards, backwards, undo, redo. For the top and bottom keys, I'm going to set the top key to a keystroke, and that will be Tab, and Tab will show and hide the interface really quickly. I find that really handy. It gives me more screen space to do my painting. I'm going to set the bottom key of the rocker ring to a keystroke, and that'll be Control-0. Control-0 will zoom to fit inside of Corel Painter. So what that means is it'll zoom the canvas to be as big as possible on the screen. That's all of the keyboard shortcuts for Corel Painter. You can of course click the plus button and you can add other applications by browsing. For example, you could go to Program Files, Adobe Photoshop, and you could add Photoshop. And just like we did with Corel Painter, you could add Adobe Photoshop specific keyboard shortcuts. That way when you're running Photoshop, you'll get keyboard shortcuts for that program. When you're using Painter, you'll get keyboard shortcuts for that program. And you can have a general for all or other if you like. So now let's open Corel Painter and let's test out our express keys. I'm going to start with Shift. If I hold Shift, that'll let me do a number of things, one of which is draw straight lines. If I hold down Alt, I can invoke the Color Sampler tool, and this works in most art applications. That'll let you sample colors on screen. Control comes in handy now and then, but we'll skip over that for now. Moving down to the bottom 3 express keys, we have Pan, which can pan the view of our canvas. Below that, we have the temporal color picker, which really quickly pops up a little color picker on screen. That's much better than having a big palette always on screen. And then below that is a button to turn touch on and off, because sometimes touch can get in the way. Now moving on to the rocker ring, we have undo on the left and redo on the right. The top button is for Tab, which shows and hides the user interface. And the bottom express key can zoom the canvas to fit the available space on screen. So there you go, that's how to install software on your CINTIQ Companion and customize it for digital painting. In the final video of this series, we'll do a performance test on the Companion 2. We'll test the disk drive, software performance, outdoor performance, and battery drain.